Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. We're going back into Red Zone against Mega Shenron today, and we are using the TEQ Ultimate Gohan. Now that he has a 200% lead, and now that I've finally finished link leveling him to level 10 links, it's time to use him in the harder content in the game. Now, he was already very good at 170, on a 170 lead in Red Zone. He already worked pretty well. But now, of course, he's performing even better on the 200% lead, and even more so with the level 10 links also. So I thought, now that he's kind of at his best, now that he's got a 200% lead and I finished link leveling him finally, let's show him at his very best in Red Zone. Unfortunately not rainbowed, but 90%. It's only we're only missing an extra 10%. It's not going to change that much, but I thought there's no better time than now to try him in Red Zone. And I have to say immediately, he's already amazing. Like, he was already very good in Red Zone on a 170 lead. Like, a lot of people used him on a 170 lead team, and he still worked very well, especially for a 2.5-year-old unit. But on a 200% lead, it's like he hasn't aged. I have to say, and I think I said this during the 200% lead max links video, he's probably one of the best aging units I think we've ever seen in Dokkan. Like, he has had the most longevity out of any, and I mean any unit that has ever come out. He has had the most successful longevity in the game. Ever since he dropped, he's been useful for Super Battle Road, ESBR stages as they constantly update. He was used on 170 lead portions of teams, or just 170 leads in general against Red Zone when it first came out, because he's so good defensively. Off of like a couple stacks, even on a 170 lead team, because he has the guaranteed guard, he already tanks double digits on basics. He already tanks incredibly well. And considering he'll be greatly raising his attack and defense every time he supers throughout the whole of a Red Zone event, means he's only going to tank better and better and better, and tank some of the hardest super attacks in the game for next to nothing. And that was on a 170 lead team. Now he has a 200% lead, and he's performing even better than that. And as I said, he's been used against some of the hardest content in the game since he released. Super Battle Road, ESBR, Goku and Vegeta event. Obviously, that's like his bread and butter. That's his prime, because that's a long event that you can stack in. God event, Red Zone stages, probably all of them he'll be good in. He was used against Broly at the time when it first dropped, the hardest Red Zone stage in the game. You could probably use him against the Metal Cooler Core and he'll do very well there. He's been used in every piece of hard content in the game, and he has been amazing in every single piece of the hard content in the game. The only thing he was missing until worldwide was a 200% lead, which of course has only made him better. And I've gone one step further, which of course you can too, is level 10 links on top of that. And of course, however many dupes you have him as well, is also going to help him on top of that. But obviously that depends on how many dupes you have in your TEQ Ultimate Gohan. But just having one would be enough, just so he gets additionals. Just so he gets additionals and can stack up quicker. But he done really, really well here. I would say the only thing... Actually, there's two things that let him down, and one of them's not even his fault. One of them is his damage output's never really been the best. He does have the potential to have very good damage output, because of course, he stacks prior to transforming both attack and defense, and he does it by 50%, which is even better. And again, if you get additionals along the way, of course, you can obviously make up for the time in a short space of time, because you may get additionals and, you know, kind of do that a lot quicker, stack a lot quicker. The other thing that is kind of like his downside, which this one isn't his fault, is his 200% lead team. So he only has one 200% lead in the game. Even in the next couple months, with the next couple releases, he still only has one. Unfortunately, of course, he does go on Vegeta and Trunks' 170 lead portion of the team, but he doesn't go on the full 200% lead. He will still work really well there, but he only has one 200% lead in the game, and that is, of course, Birdcoo's Powerful Comeback. Now, Powerful Comeback is not a bad category. It's okay. There's some very good units here. If you're missing some of the better ones, especially the more defensive options, or the better defensive options that you can actually run in Red Zone, it can be a little bit of a struggle of a category to run. And yeah, as I said, this one isn't really his fault. You have the finickiness when it comes to running dual Birdcoo leads, which so far in my experience hasn't been too bad, but it could easily all go wrong, which is of course only one of them can revive, which in itself is fine. But only one of them can revive, which means only one of them can get the guaranteed guard. So, you know, if the second one doesn't get guaranteed guard, as soon as you're below 60% defense, and there's a ton of attacks coming his way, and maybe Birdcoo hasn't stacked up that much, he can take a whole bunch of damage. A whole bunch of damage. Even if, like, I mean, in red zone, if you don't have, like, I mean, realistically, 1.6 million defense and Birdku gets supered without guard, he can still die. Basics, obviously, he can tank quite well, but the guard and the stacking is what makes him so good defensively and one of the best units in the game. But, yeah, that's not, as I said, that's not TEQ Ultimate Gohan's fault. That's the finicky part about the powerful comeback lead. I'm running two 200% leads for Birdku. There's only one of them can get the guaranteed guard. Of course, there are other moments and other times and other occasions like my run here where we don't really have a drop below 60% HP. You know, the defensive units, you can tank supers well. We're tanking the supers. We don't lose too much. We make enough health back from orbs to stay above 60% HP. So we didn't really have to worry about taking too much damage. Not to mention, of course, Omega has the final phase where he'll only super you on the KO super, which for the most part you want to avoid unless you Whis with like one of the better defensive units, double Whis, or have a rage mode or giant form transformation where you can just completely avoid it. So, you know, there was that. So, as I said, it can actually work out just fine and you won't notice it. Or on another hand, it's kind of like a 50-50 coin toss. It can be quite finicky. The other part, as I said, the category might not run that well if you're missing some of the better units or better defensive units for red zone anyway. So you may not actually run the 200% lead itself. And then not only that, and again, this is still under the umbrella of, you know, the category itself, which is not TEQ Ultimate Gohan's fault, is there's not that many amazing damage dealers. Like, don't get me wrong, the LRSSJs from Worldwide, their damage output is very good. Again, especially if you get any additionals, you know, once they've got their active off, they can get the crit with 24 key. They can deal some good damage. However, when it comes to red zone, they're not the best defensively and you probably don't want to take them. I brought them because I don't really have any other options damage dealer wise. So if you're missing them, you miss out on a huge damage dealer, but even then, they're not the best defensively and not the most reliable for the likes of red zone. The same can be said for Nameku. Defensively, he can be very good, but because of his medium chance to guard, he can also be a liability if he gets caught. Damage output's not bad, but you know, there's not really any amazing damage dealers. Like, you don't have the gods here, the SSJ4s, you don't have like an LR Final Form cooler on this team. So things do take a little bit longer. It does help TEQ Ultimate Gohan stack, but as I said, on a 200% lead team with level 10 links, after like 2-3 stacks, while linked up with the Strength Easy A Ultimate Gohan, of course, is one of his best linking partners, one of his only linking partners, and the support Strength Ultimate Gohan offers him, you kind of don't really have to stack up too much. But TEQ Ultimate Gohan can deal some good damage himself. I mean, you're literally seeing it right now. He's got 7.8 million attack stat. That's pretty decent. And that's off a few stacks, and we're hitting some big crits. However, of course, Omega has type advantage against him. So if he doesn't crit, I remember rightly, he's only doing like 800k on a super, which is nowhere near enough, especially when you have a countdown KO super. But for the most part, as I said, with level 10 links on a 200% lead team, I have no faults. I said the only two downsides to him is his damage output isn't the best. It wasn't the best upon release, but I mean, it does have the potential again if you can stack him up enough and get him to like a pretty insane attack stat. But even over 7 mil, what we have him on here, 7.8 mil, almost 8 million attack stat, is still pretty good. And I mean, considering he's a 2.5-year-old unit, maybe a bit older than that, his damage output is actually still quite decent. And again, especially for just over 2.5-year-old unit, considering what's released nowadays, yes, he doesn't match up to that, but considering how old he is, the longevity's there, man. And I've said defensively, off of like 2 stacks, 3 stacks, combined with the guard, he's tanking double digits on basics immediately, which means, you know, throughout the entire event when he's going to be stacking even more, if you have dupes in him, if he hits an additional, you know, you're going to stack up by 50% twice in one turn, which is great. Also helps his damage output. But more so the defensive, you know, valuability there is a lot more crucial. Off of 2-3 stacks, he already tanked red zone bosses for double digits, especially on a 200% lead, especially with level 10 links, especially with Easy A Strength Ultimate Gohan, which is perfect. And I said he's only going to stack up even more throughout the entire event, which means he's only going to be able to tank even better and better and better. And of course, tank some of the hardest hitting supers in the game from some of the hardest bosses because of all that defense where he's been stacking and the guaranteed guard for next to nothing. So I decided to transform him in the strength phase. So we're sitting on just over 600k defense with guaranteed guard. Of course, we're still tanking Omega's basics, even with type disadvantage, for literally double digits. And he's also putting out some pretty good numbers. If he doesn't crit, again, we're only doing like 800k, which is not good. If he crits him, because of where we got him to offensively, and he's got, as I said, just under an 8 million attack stat, if he crits, I think he crits a Mega, if I remember rightly, for like 3-4 mil, which is really good. So again, even though offense has never been Gohan's like strong suit compared to a lot of other releases around him, considering he's over 2.5 years old, and the type of numbers we're seeing nowadays, like 9-10 mil, you know, LR final form cooler, and even more than that, his numbers offensively, given how old he is, actually are still quite solid, I do have to say. And again, especially if you do get any additionals along the way to stack him up even quicker, which is obviously going to make him even better in red zone as well. So if you have dupes, you're up, you're winning. But he done really well. He honestly made a Mega look like a pushover, considering how easy he was tanking him and how quickly. I said the only other thing that lets him down is the category when it comes to the finickiness of running dual bird coups and getting, you know, the revive off of one of them, only having guaranteed guard on one of them, and then outside of like a couple, handful of units, and one of them being the LRSSJs, who aren't the best defensively and not up to par when it comes to red zone, because they're really not, is there's not really that many damage dealers. But as I said, you can't really put the blame on Gohan because that's not his fault. That's the 200% lead fault, which is of course the powerful comeback 200% lead. But that does hurt him a little bit, and that will hurt any other units that do go on the powerful comeback 200% lead. But other than that, offensively done really, really well. And this is one of those where you don't get to stack up too much. You can stack up a fair bit. As you can see, we're on turn 13. A lot of teams beat this a lot quicker, but as I said, you know, there's not that many amazing damage dealers on powerful comeback. But defensively, he's one of the best in the game. He is still one of the best units in the game over 2.5 years later, and the 200% lead is only going to prolong his longevity even more until the day he gets an easy A and becomes the best unit in the game again. But he done very, very well. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you're new. Strength Ultimate Gohan Red Zone runs coming very, very soon. I'll see you in the next video, guys, and peace!